سے کہیں گرا چلائے فاطمہ
کہ میرا ناز نہیں گرا
چلائے فاطمہ
کہ میرا ناز نہیں گرا
کتا ہے کوئی دم میں سر اس نوجوان کا مٹائے
نشان علی کے نشان کا
مٹائے اب نشان
علی کے نشان کا
سنتے ہی صدا کے شہنشاہ بیروبار دورے گرے اٹھے نہ سنبھالا گیا جگر کانپے جو پاؤں تام لیا بازوئے پہ سر چلاتے تھے کہو
علی اکبر چلے کے دار
چلاتے تھے کہو
علی اکبر چلے کے دار
مجمع ہٹاؤ فوجے ستم کا ترائی سے
بیٹا ملا دو جلد مجھے میرے بھائی سے
بیٹا ملا دو جلد
مجھے میرے بھائی سے
اکبر اجڑ گیا میرا گروا مصیبت سیدھی نہ ہوگی اب یہ کمروا مصیبت ہے آتا دادا گے پہ دروا مصیبت کاٹا
گیا چھری سے جگروا مصیبت
کاٹا گیا چھری سے
جگروا مصیبت
پرسا تو دون جف کی طرف تو موڑ دو سر پیتا
چلوں گا میرے ہاتھ چھوڑ دو
سر پیتا چلوں گا
میرے ہاتھ چھوڑ دو
اکبر کھڑی بلاش جو لائے حسین کو عباس جاں بلب نظر آئے حسین کو تڑپا وہ شیر سن کے صدائے حسین کو اکبر نے ہاتھ
دکھائے حسین کو
اکبر نے ہاتھ اٹھا کے
دکھائے حسین کو
دو کوئے غام کے دل پر جو ایک بار گر پڑے پہلو میں لاش
کے شہ ابرار گر پڑے
پہلو میں لاش کے
ابرار گر پڑے
یہ کہ ڈال دی تنے پر نور پر ابا فرمایا اب تو شاد ہوئے تم پر میں فدا یہ خلت اخیر ہے اے میرے دل ربا اس کو بھی لوٹ لیں گے
مگر بانی جفا
اس کو بھی لوٹ لیں گے
مگر بانی جفا
چن جائیں گے ردائیں بھی اس اشتہار میں سرنگ بے
نکلے گی بروائے میں
سرنگ بے نکلیں
بروائے میں
یہ سن کے پائشہ کی جانب جھکایا سر کانپے لہو بڑی ہوئی آنکھوں کو کھول کر تب کے مزاج سے خون کے خطرے در ادھر کسی سے
حسین پکی آخری نظر
کسی سے حسین
پکی آخری نظر
منکا جری کا دل گیا بھائی کے سامنے بھائی کا دم
نکل گیا بھائی کے سامنے
بھائی کا دم نکل گیا بھائی کا دم نکل گیا بھائی کے سامنے
فرماؤں والے محمد صلوات. Before we get started with the speech today, we have just a representative from Zahra Trust here who's just going to speak for a couple of minutes about Zahra Trust, and inshallah, after that we'll have Sayyid Bilal take the pulpit.
Salawat. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ali and I'm here with the Zahra Trust. Zahra Trust is a global charity serving the Ahlul Bayt with the vision of making every single person self-sufficient. We have 3 main offices in the UK, the US, and Canada. We provide support to vulnerable communities around the globe. Our goal is to support communities in living with dignity, achieving normalcy, and thriving in self-sufficiency. This Muharram, our goal is to honor the legacy of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam by ending thirst today. We're actively seeking donations to build water wells in marginalized communities. Your donations will give families access to clean drinking water daily and equip communities with the tools they need to thrive. Feel free to talk to me outside if you have any questions or would like to learn more about Zahra Trust. Thank you.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jazakallah. And if I could please request everybody to scoot up as much as you can, inshallah, to make it easier for those that will attend in a little bit. With the loud salawat, please join me in welcoming Sayyid Bilal Rizvi to the pulpit. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
If I can request that you move as close to the minbar as possible. Yesterday it wasn't possible for people to get in near the later portion of the majlis. Then in about 10 minutes this hall will start filling up. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله. I was sent a list of names in particular to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for them. Najma Nasir, Zainab Kasamali, Hajj Kasamali, Ruqayya Nasir, Hassan Nasir, Suraya, Muhammad Baqir, Maysoon Hussain, Nuzat Khan, Zahra Sultan, Zainab Ghulam Ali, Shamim Chandu, Hassan Chatu, Parvez Ali Chola, Mir Ahmed Ali Razvi, Tayyaba Begum, Hadi Jafri, Bilqis Begum, and as your own marhumin as well as the marhumin of those who have been sponsoring these programs on each of these individual nights. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والسولة الحيدرية والاسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكاذمية والحجج الرذوية والجود التقوية والنقابة النقوية والحيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه أما بعد فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي ومن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور والذين كفروا أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Fatima Zahra in particular, a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To give our condolences to the Imam of our time as we approach the day of Ashura, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In this past Shahr Ramadan of the year 2025, the TV channel MBC, the Middle East Broadcast Channel, a Saudi media conglomerate, which is amongst the most influential in the Middle East, released a series which was titled Muavia. It is reported that this TV series, the amount of money that was spent on it was in between $75 and $100 million. And this made it the most expensive TV production in the Arab world. Within this series, the legacy of Muavia was rehabilitated. And you find by using historical records, which were often unverified, they sought to paint a picture of this individual as being an early ruler of honor, of dignity, and of righteousness in the Muslim world. And they often minimize the position of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the influence of Amir al-Mu'mineen within that time period. You see, a production such as this, which was done in a modern manner, it sought to bring to life the history of an individual who is amongst the most polarizing in early Islamic history, and an individual who is amongst those who had amongst the most influence. This individual, Muavia ibn Abi Sufyan, many in the modern world take it for granted that his position is something that has always been respected in the Sunni world. But when you look at the facts of reality, you find that there have been many great Sunni scholars who have been the pillars of Ahlul Sunnah who spoke out against Muavia ibn Abi Sufyan. For example, an individual like Imam al-Nasa'i. Imam al-Nasa'i was one of the authors of the Sahih al-Sitta, one of the 6 most important works of hadith. Imam al-Nasa'i was beaten up for his criticism of Muavia. When he goes to Sham, it's stated that the people of Sham, they say to Imam al-Nasa'i that why don't you tell us about Muavia and the virtues of Muavia? He says that the only thing that I know about Muavia is that Rasulullah said, La ashba Allahu batna, that may the stomach of Muavia never be full. This individual, classical, non-Shia scholar, you find this was his position. And indeed, one of the ways in which we can reach this historical truth about this personality is by examining in which manner did he establish his rule and in which manner did he maintain his rule. And that's why the subject of analysis tonight is to look at those ways which Muavia used to deceive the common people of that time, and to see that are there tyrants in today's world that are using those same methods. You see, the first reason I picked this topic for tonight is that our series has been on Ayatul Kursi. And one of those words that occurs in Ayatul Kursi in the expanded sense 2 times is the word Taghut, or those who rebel against Allah. The first time it occurs is in chapter 2, verse 256. وَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. Those who disavow and turn away from those who transgress against Allah, and they believe in Allah, they have held on to the rope and the handhold of Allah firmly. But the second way in which it occurs within these verses is in chapter 2, verse 257. Over there it says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Those who disbelieve, أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتِ يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. That those who disbelieve, they have taken their protectors as those who rebel against Allah, and those individuals take them from the light into darkness. You know, the word taghut comes from the Arabic word tagha. And tagha means in the Arabic language for somebody to go into a great excess. In other words, you go beyond the bounds of the religion. You go beyond the limits of the religion. That's why anyone who does this in excess, you find that individual is from amongst the taghut. And without a doubt, when you look at the narrations demonstrate that one category of the taghut are those who opposed Ahlul Bayt with their enmity. You know, there's a narration which Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, in his commentary on this verse, in his famous commentary called At-Tasneem, which is 80 volumes, he quotes this hadith where Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the Imam, he says, نَحْنُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ فِي الْقُرْآنِ. When the Quran says al-bayinat, those clear proofs, we are an example of those clear proofs. وَعَدُوَّنَا الْفَحْشَاءُ وَالْمُنْكَرُ وَالطَّاغُوتِ. And our enemies are an example of indecencies, corruptions, and our enemies are an example of the taghut and those who rebel against Allah. Of course, the word taghut means any rebel in general. But the Imam is showing a specific example, so you find this is the first point. The second reason why this topic is of importance is that I mentioned that when you look at the methodology in history of those who are tyrants, their methodologies, they may differ. That's why when this ayat, it says dolomat in the plural, darkness in the plural, and it says nur and light in the singular. That shows the path of those who oppose Allah, they can fight with each other. They can clash with each other. Whereas the awliya of Allah will never clash amongst each other. But the second thing that it shows is that their methods may differ. But despite this differing in method, you find that throughout history, there are certain things which each tyrant has done that when it comes to the masses, they use them to dupe and to fool the masses. And one of those individuals was Muavia. You know, Muavia, there are 2 narrations about him which are of interest. And both of them show that he was an intelligent person. But that intelligence which isn't used in the path of God is not actually intelligence. You know, in Usul al-Kafi and Kitab al-Aqli wal-Jal, which is one of the early works of the Shia, there's a narration of the 6th Imam where they say to the 6th Imam that ma'al aql, that, oh Imam, what is intellect? You know, the Imam doesn't say that just being able to think and understand things is intellect. But he says, ma ubida bihir rahman wa maktusiba bihil jinan. That the intellect is that through which paradise is acquired. And the intellect is that through which Allah is worshipped. So that intelligence which isn't taking you towards God, it's not intellect in the full sense. But when you look at this narration, at that moment, the narrator asks a question. He says, فَالَّذِي كَانَ فِي Muavia. He says, then what about Muavia? Muavia was an intelligent person. Muavia was a person who gained influence. He is not using it in that path. The Imam, he says, tilka nakra, tilka shaytana. That is deception, that is not intellect. That is satanic. وَهِيَ شَبِيهَةٌ بِالْأَقْلِ وَلَيْسَتْ بِالْأَقْلِ. that it resembles the intellect, but it's not the intellect. You find this is the first narration. The second narration of interest about Muavia is found in Nahjul Balagha, sermon number 200. Over there, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he stands in front of the people and he says, Wallahi ma Muavia tu adha minni. That Muavia is not more astute than me. Muavia is not more clever than me. Muavia is not smarter than me. وَلَكِنَّهُ يَغْدِرُ وَيَفْجُرُ. But what he does is that he deceives and lies. And then the Imam says, وَلَوْلَا كَرَاهِيَّةُ الْغَدَرِ لَا كُنْتُ مِنْ أَدْحَى النَّاسِ. That if it wasn't that Allah dislikes deceit and deception, I would be the most clever amongst the people. In other words, Amir al-Mu'mineen, just because he is not playing Muaviya's game, doesn't mean that Ali ibn Abi Talib didn't know how to play the game. Amir al-Mu'mineen could have played it at a much higher level. But what differentiated Ali ibn Abi Talib from Muawiya is that principles bound Amir al-Mu'mineen, that Amir al-Mu'mineen wouldn't engage in deception. Amir al-Mu'mineen wouldn't lie towards the masses. And because of that, you find that Muawiya was able to carry out what he carried out. Now when we come to the crux of the analysis, and we examine that first thing which Muawiya used to deceive the people, which tyrants throughout history are using, is the use of force. The use of force is the easiest of the methods. The easiest of the methods for these individuals is to take out a gun, or to take out a sword, or to drop a bomb like we see on the children of Gaza being dropped in the world today. You find that this is the easiest method. And not only is it use force, but it is to show your force as well. You know, when it comes to Muavia and the use of force, you find there is no greater example than how many of the ashab of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Muavia, he killed. You know, you look at somebody like Hujr ibn Adi al-Kindi. Hujr ibn Adi was from the ashab of Rasulullah. Hujr ibn Adi was one of the companions of Rasulullah. You know, today in the world they say that the Shia are that school that insult the ashab and the companions of Rasulullah. By Allah, we are those people that don't praise anybody who killed the companions of Rasulullah. Anyone who has killed the companions of Rasulullah, we do not praise such an individual. Are you able to say the same? You find the reality is that when you look at one of the things that Muavia he did, is that Hujr ibn Adi al-Kindi was an individual who was from the companions of Rasulullah, number one, and he was from amongst the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen who was there on the day of Jamal and on the day of Siffin. Hujr ibn Adi, one of the things which he would do is that he spoke out against Ziyad ibn Abi. Ziyad ibn Abi is the father of Ibn Ziyad. And what this name it means is that Ziyad, the son of a father. That when you have a title, Ziyad, the son of a father, is the name of this person. It says everything that you need to know about the mother of this man. This Ziyad ibn Abi, not only would he curse Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Friday sermon, but he would come late to the Friday sermon. And Hujr ibn Adi would say that, what are you doing, O man? Eventually, under the instructions of Muavia, in that place called Marjul Adara, Hujr ibn Adi and 10 of his companions are captured. But when they're captured, Muavia, he says, there is one way in which I'll let all of you go. Hujr says, what is that way? He says, I want you to curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. Hujr says, by Allah, I will not curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. And my only request before you kill me is that you kill my son before me. They say, oh man, what do you mean kill your son before you? He says, I would rather see my son dead in front of my eyes with the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib than for there be a chance that he goes to the side of Muavia after I passed away. You find one example of an individual whom force was used against by Muavia is Hujr ibn Adi. Another personality, Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuzai. Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuzai again is from the Ashab of Rasulullah. And Amir al-Mu'mineen would say about Amr, this individual, he was there on the day of Jamal, he was there on the day of Siffin, he was there on the day of Nahrawan. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say that I wish I had 100 companions like Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuzai. This Amr, he was killed by Muavia. And more than that, the second thing which tyrants they do, which is the method of the tyrants then and in every time period, I said number one, they use force, which is the easiest and the simplest method for them. But number two is that they display their force. You know what he did? Muavia, after he kills Amr, it stated that the head of Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuzai was paraded throughout the different provinces in the Muslim Ummah. It was the first time that a severed head was taken from city to city and it was displayed publicly. When the head of Imam al-Hussein is taken from Karbala to Kufa to Sham, where was this precedence coming from? This precedence, Yazid had learned it from his father. And if you want to see how brutal the Umayyads were, there's an academic at Ohio State University by the name of Sean Anthony. And when he wrote a book, he titled it Death as a Spectacle, Crucifixion in the Umayyad Era. And it's a book of about 110 pages. Within there, he gives all of the examples of how Banu Umayyah would publicize the death of their opponents in order that fear comes into the hearts of the masses. You look at somebody like Mitam al-Tammar, that Mitam would be killed later on, and they would say, "Oh Mitam, stop the praise of Ali ibn Abi Talib." And Mitam, he would continue, they would hang Mitam upon a tree. You find this is death as a spectacle. This is a way that the tyrants they use to strike fear into the hearts of the masses. So you find another example of force and striking fear via display of force was Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuzai. A third example, Muavia, he kills Malik al-Ashtar. You know, Malik is the one that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Kana li kama kuntu li Rasulillah. That Malik, and it's a strange statement, that Malik was to me as I was to Rasulullah. You know, usually in the narrations, two infallibles are compared to each other. But over here, Amir al-Mu'mineen compares his relationship to Malik like his own with Rasulullah. So you find this Malik was one of those individuals that when he was going towards Egypt, Muavia poisons the food and the honey of Malik. And when he poisons it, he says, Al-asal min junudillah, that honey is also from the army of Allah. So you find alongside this, there are many other examples of force that Muavia used. So the first method of Muavia and the tyrants, which is the simplest, as I said, is brute force. The second is to make a public display of that force so people are scared, so people are fearful. You know what the third method is? The third method which Muavia used, which many tyrannical regimes they use today, is that they will use public figures or religious figures and they'll use them for their own personal gain. You know, many tyrannical governments, they'll have the celebrities of their time within their pocket. They'll have people of influence within their pocket. And at times, there will even be religious figures within their pocket. You know, Muavia, one of the things which he famously did is that he encouraged the fadail of Amir al-Mu'mineen not to be recited and for them to be given to other individuals. One of those people that Muavia, he does this to and he uses is Samura ibn Jundub. Samura ibn Jundub was a figure of that time who was well known. You know what Muavia pays Samura to do? He pays them that when the ayat of the Quran, chapter 2, verse 204, when it says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي حَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهُ عَلَى مَا فِي نَفْسِهِ وَهُوَ لَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. You know this verse? It says, from amongst the people is he whose words, they attract you in the life of this world. And that person claims that he testifies for Allah, but this person is amongst the greatest opponents of Allah. Muavia pays Samura ibn Jundub to say that this verse was about Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then when you come two verses later, and it says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَشْتَرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, that from amongst the people are those who sell their souls seeking the pleasure of Allah, which is about Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, state that this verse is about Ibn Muljam. You find this example of a religious figure being used to distort the truth is something which Muavia he did. There are many other examples as well. You look at an individual called Qadi Shorai. Qadi Shorai was a judge. And within an Islamic society, a judge needs to be very careful. Because a judge, if he is accepting gifts, and a judge, if he is sitting with the wealthy of society, then naturally justice could be compromised. That's why a judge in an Islamic society was paid well. You know, in those societies that succeeded, teachers, lawyers, judges, positions of integrity were paid well so that goal which they're trying to impart, it's not compromised. You find this Qadi Shorai was an individual time and time again, Banu Umayyah they would use. And this individual, he would compromise this reality. So far, the first method I mentioned of Muavia and the tyrants is the use of force. The second is to make a public display of that force. A third method that they use is that often religious figures will be in their pocket. The fourth method that they would use is that they will spread lies and false narratives about their political adversaries. This is something which we see time and time again. You know, Muavia, he had made Sham into such a place that you find Amir al-Mu'mineen is cursed in the khutbah of Salatul Jummah. And this is even found in Sahih al-Muslim. When you go to Sahih al-Muslim and you go to sunnah.com, you go to the chapter on the fadail of the Sahaba, and you go to the section about the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen, hadith number 2404, it stated that Muavia says to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas that what stops you from cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib? Sa'd says, there are three things that Ali had which prevented me from cursing him. The first thing is that in the expedition of Tabuk, Ali, he didn't go. And when he was left behind with the women and the children, he says, Ya Rasulullah, you left me with the women and the children. At that point, Rasulullah said, أما ترضى أن تكون مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى إن أنه لا نبي بعدي. That, oh Ali, does it not please you to be to me what Harun was to Musa, except there is no prophet after me? He says this is the first thing. He says the second thing which prevents me from cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib is that on the day of Khaybar, all of us were waiting for that flag. And Rasulullah said, لَأُعْتِيَنَّ الرَّايَةَ رَجُلًا يُحِبُّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيُحِبُّهُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. That tomorrow I will give the flag to a man who loves Allah and His Prophet. And Allah and His Prophet, they love that man. He says this honor was given to Ali. You know, the whole goal of Islamic spirituality is for a person to love Allah at the highest level. And number two, for him to become the beloved of Allah at the highest level. And there's only one man in history whose love for Allah And Allah's love for him has been certified by the tongue of Rasulullah, and that is none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So you find this is the second thing. He says the third reason that prevents me from cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib is that when the verse of Mubahala, it came down. And it said, O Prophet, فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ. That call yourselves, ourselves, call your women, we will call our women. Call your children, we will call our children. Ali was from amongst the Ahlul Bayt of Rasulullah. So you find this propaganda and these false narratives were spread against Amir al-Mu'mineen through cursing, and it reached to such an extent that Ad-Dahabi and Muruj Ad-Dahabi says that when Ali ibn Abi Talib was martyred, the people would say that where was Ali martyred? They would say Ali is killed in the mosque. The people of Sham would reply that Ali ibn Abi Talib used to pray. In other words, propaganda had reached such a level that that man who prayed when there was none other than Rasulullah and Khadija alayhi salam praying publicly in Mecca, those people are saying that we didn't know that Ali ibn Abi Talib used to pray. So you find that when it came to this method of Muavia, all tyrants, they use this method, and this is something which is clear to us. So we find, number one, the use of force. Number two, a display of that force. Number three, we see that religious figures are used oftentimes for their gains. Number four, we see that they spread lies about their political adversaries. You know, the Quran says, O mankind, O human beings, in Surah Al-Hujarat, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu, that, O you who believe, in ja'akum fasikun binaba'in fatabayyanu, that whenever an open sinner, he comes to you with news, verify that you news, an yusibu qawman bijahalatin, so that you don't harm people out of your ignorance, out of your jahala. You know, this verse over here is showing that one of the most difficult things in the life of a human being is that somebody spreads a false rumor or a lie about that person. And you find Allah is showing that this is one of the most disgusting things you can do about someone. One of the most disgusting things that you can do is you spread gossip which isn't true about someone. But you know, even though this act is disgusting of itself, Ahlul Bayt have shown us how to deal with every facet of life. Even those facets of how do you respond to certain particular difficulties. You know, I'll never forget. There's one narration of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir where the Imam gives a perspective on if somebody speaks ill about you. And this perspective is something which we don't often think of. The Imam says that when somebody gossips, when somebody spreads false news, when somebody speaks ill of you, there's only two possibilities. Either it's true or it's false. If it's true, your concern before Allah on the day of judgment is much greater than your concern in front of the people. And if it's false, Allah is the one who answers on the day of judgment, and He rewards you for that difficulty in this world. In other words, either perspective that you're going towards, you find it's something of positivity. This verse, which said that if a sinner comes, verify that news. This verse was revealed about a man who was close to Muavia. And that man was Al-Walid ibn Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt. This individual is that same person that during the caliphate of Uthman, he would recite Salatul Fajr drunk. You know, in Salatul Fajr, when you go into sajda, what do you say? You say, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih. But you know what this man would say? He would say in the dhikr on that day, Washrabi wasqini. He would recite a line of Arabic poetry which speaks from the perspective of the alcohol, and it says, drink me and satisfy yourself through me. after reciting these 2 units, you find he turns around and he says, should I continue to recite? And he recites 2 more units. That not only is Salatul Fajr recited in such a state, but you find number 2, he recites 4 units. And on top of that, he vomits in the mosque in that mosque after he recites this. This ayat was revealed about Al-Walid. It stated that Rasulullah sends him to the clan of Banu Mustalik to get the zakat. And he had a previous animosity towards Banu Mustalik. When the people, they came out to pay the zakat. He gets over there, he sees a crowd coming, he runs away and he says, Ya Rasulullah, they came to kill me. At that moment, Allah reveals this ayat, that when an open sinner brings news, verify it. Now this same individual is there in the governance of Muavia. So you find this is another reality, that Muavia would spread a false narrative. So far, the tactics which Muavia used, which other tyrants use as well, is number 1, force. Number 2, a show of force. Number 3, to use celebrities and religious figures. Number 4, to spread false narratives. At the 5th level, another thing which all tyrants they use is that they manipulate religious texts and they manipulate religious ideas. This is something that Muavia did, and this is something which occurs in the world today as well. You know, recently, many of you saw an interview where a particular senator, when he was speaking, he said that as a Christian, I follow the Bible. And the Bible says that God will bless those who bless Israel. And God will curse those who curse Israel. I want to be on the side of the blessings, as if the Bible was speaking about a nation state that was formed in the 20th century. But you find that for a tyrannical regime, one method that they use is that those texts and those symbols which are sacred within a religion, they'll manipulate the interpretation, or they will present them in a way to invoke emotion in the people for their own goal. And one of the finest examples of this was Muavia on the day of Siffin. Muavia on the day of Siffin was in such a bad position that it stated that Malik al-Ashtar had reached the tent of Muavia. But at that point, the strategy of Muavia was what? Muavia, he places the Quran on a spear. And when the people saw this religious symbol, the Quran on a spear, it invoked emotion in them, and they forgot the reality that in which household did the Quran come down to. When the Quran came, it wasn't on the father of Muavia that it came. It wasn't on the grandfather of Muavia the Quran was revealed to, but it was revealed on the household of Ali ibn Abi Talib. It was revealed on the household of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So you find this is one example. Another example is you find the distortion of the meaning of religious texts. You know, one of the key things that Muavia he did is he wanted to humanize Rasulullah because they themselves were flawed. And the more you humanize Rasulullah as being like them, the more they can say that we are like Rasulullah. That's why a key Umayyad tenet is that they would misinterpret chapter 17 of the Quran, which speaks about the Mi'raj of Rasulullah. Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylam min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa. They say when this verse says that free from defects is Allah, who took the Prophet from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa, he says that this was just a dream. You find this misinterpretation was for a purpose, for an agenda, to strengthen their own rule. You know, when the Quran says abd, there is no portion in the Quran where the word abd is used to mean a part of a person. When Allah says abd, my creation, it means the whole creation. In other words, when Rasulullah is called an abd and is taken to Mi'raj, it means all of Rasulullah, the soul of Rasulullah, the body of Rasulullah. It's not just a dream of Rasulullah. You find this is one misinterpretation. A second way which Banu Umayyah would distort the Quran and to distort the meaning of a religious text for their own gain is that they would say predestination is the method of the Quran. The Quran says that everything in this world is under the qudra of Allah. How does the idea of predestination benefit a tyrant? The idea of Jabr, it benefits a tyrant because now he can say that Allah placed me here, that everything is predestined. Thus, what this means is that my rule is predestined as well. So you find another method of the tyrant after examining the use of force, number one. After the display of force, number two. Number three, you find that they will spread a false narrative about their opponents. Number four, they will use religious figures, which Muavia he did. Number five, what Muavia he did was what? He disrespected the interpretation of the Quran and the sanctity of religious symbols. The sixth thing that Muavia did, which all tyrants they do, is that they controlled the media of that time. You know, the perspective on Israel today is much different. And the reason, one of the factors that it's much different is the rise of independent media and social media. These factors, you find, played a role into their approval rating being at an all-time low. You find the control of media is something which happened in the time of Muavia. You know, the media of that time, the cultural icon and cornerstone of that time was poetry. You know, in today's world, we can say perhaps music is the cultural cornerstone. But in that time period, it was poetry. And you find that one of the people that Muavia used was a Christian poet. You know, in the rule of Muavia, there were many Christians who carried out the dirty work that the Muslims weren't willing to carry out. For example, the chief toxicologist of Muavia, a person who would prepare poison, the chief toxicologist of Muavia, Ibn Otal, was a Christian. Another example is that the closest advisor of Muavia was whom? It was Sarjun, a Christian man. You know, the son of Sarjun is very famous in the Christian world. And his name is John of Damascus or John Damascene. And you know why he's famous? The first book written as a refutation to Islam was written by the son of Muaviya's advisor. And you say this man is worthy of having an entire TV series after him in the Muslim world. This is that same man that Imam Hakim an-Nisapuri, when they said that what virtues does Muavia have, he says, I don't know any fadail of Muavia. They broke the member of Hakim an-Nisapuri. Imam al-Nasa'i, after he said the only hadith I know is La ashba Allahu batna, that may the stomach of Muavia never be full, it stated he was beaten on the streets over there. So you find this man, his son is what? The son of Muaviya's advisor wrote the first attack against Islam. And over there, he doesn't call it Islam. He says that this religion is the Ishmaelite heresy. In other words, it's a bid'ah of Christianity. It's an innovation of Christianity. This is one person. And another Christian that Muavia would keep in his court was an individual by the name of Al-Akhtal Ghiyat ibn Ghawth. Al-Akhtal Ghiyat ibn Ghawth was a Christian individual, and he was the official poet of Banu Umayyah. And amongst the things that Ghiyat ibn Ghawth would do is that he had no issue spreading lies about Ahlul Bayt, and he had no issue speaking ill about Amir al-Mu'mineen, that he would write lines of poetry, that the Quran, it says, that the Hadith, it says that there is no sword but the sword of Ali. And that there is no youth except Ali ibn Abi Talib, but come in front of Muavia, you'll find the answer to this line. That this was the lines of poetry that this individual, he actually recited. So you find the control of the media is something which was there. And when Banu Umayyah would have their poets, Ahlul Bayt at the same time would go through a great extent to encourage their poets. You know, one of the poets in the lives of Ahlul Bayt was Sayyid al-Himyari. And Sayyid al-Himyari wrote one of the most famous works on Imam al-Hussein of qasida and praise. And over there he says that umrur ala jadat al-Hussein faqul li'a'dumih al-zakiyah. That, O people, go and visit the body of Hussein. And when you look at the body of Hussein, instead of placing water on the grave of Hussein, make sure your tears, they fall to water the grave of Abu Abdullah. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt would say, may Allah forgive the sins of Sayyid al-Himyari. That they would encourage their own poets. They would encourage their own media. So you find that this tactic of controlling the media, controlling the narrative, was another method of Muavia, and it was something which was used as well. Another method which Muavia he uses is bribery. You find that those who live within this world, you find their tendency is to incline towards the world. Many people, they say, Imam al-Hassan. How could Imam al-Hassan make a peace treaty with Muavia? The backdrop to this is that the commander of the army of Imam al-Hassan, Ubaidullah ibn Abbas, was bribed by Muavia. That when your commander of your army has been bribed by somebody on the opposite side, what does it do to the morale of the army? So you find bribery, offering things of this world to stop speaking, offering things of this world to stop protesting against the tyrants is a method. You know, when people, they did this, when Muavia, he bribed, don't think for a moment that the companions of Ahlul Bayt, they stopped speaking. When you look at Abu Dar, he would stand and he would say, look at these individuals who hoard the gold and they hoard the silver. So you find this is another method. The final method in this analysis that Muavia used and many other tyrants they use is that they make a false display of religiosity and a false display of being righteous. That they'll say that we are the ones who are fighting for freedom, or we are the ones who are fighting for values. Nobody says that I'm here to corrupt the world. They say I'm fighting for values. The Quran in chapter 2 verse 10, it says that look at those individuals. They say, Innama nahnu muslihun, we are reformers. We're here to make the world a better place. The Quran says, Ala humul mufsidun, in reality you are causing corruption upon this earth. And you find Muavia does the same reality. You know, Muavia, he gives advice to Yazid. There's no space in the back. If you can move towards the mimbar, we're coming towards Masayib. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As close to the mimbar as you can get. So you find this reality is there. You know, one of the pieces of advice that Muavia gives to Yazid is that, oh Yazid, when you drink, drink at the nighttime. In the daytime, don't drink. In other words, maintain your public image. But at the same time, when all of these methods are being used, you find all these individuals can do is that in the life of this world, they have some sort of control. But Ahlul Bayt are those individuals that they control the hearts of the people. That you find these individuals are showing force over their bodies, Ahlul Bayt are showing control of the hearts. And that's why even a mention of these personalities, it brings tears to our eyes. And one of those personalities that every person in this hall has a special bond with is Aba Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. You know, Ayatollah Qadim Qazwini was a famous poet and a famous orator. Ayatollah Qadim Qazwini says that when Aba Fadl Abbas died, Imam al-Hussein said, Al-an inkasara dahri. that now my back has been broken. He says Hussein had already buried a brother. This isn't the first time Hussein had to bury a brother. In Medina, when he buried Imam al-Hassan, he didn't say, Al-an inkasara dahri, my back was broken. Ayatollah Qadim Qazwini says that in Medina, Abbas was still there to support Hussein. But this moment when Hussein says, my back has been broken, this is that moment that not even Abbas is there for Hussein. You know, Abbas was that last martyr from amongst the adults. Abbas is that one that when he was brought up, his mother would make sure that Abbas took care of Hussein. You know, when Ali ibn Abi Talib was dying, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he would give everyone a will. And he would place the hands of each of his children in the hand of Imam al-Hassan. Imam al-Hussein's hand was in the hand of Imam al-Hassan. Muhammad al-Hanafiya's hand was in the hand of Imam al-Hassan. But as this is going on, al-Baneen is watching. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen neglected Aba Fadl Abbas. al-Baneen, she goes. She says, oh master, what about my Abbas? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, oh al-Baneen, everyone is for Hassan. Abbas is for Hussein. When the day of Ashura it happened, Abbas wouldn't get ijazah from Imam al-Hussein. The Maqtal says, a point it came, it's as if the chest of Abbas didn't have any sabr anymore. Abbas not having sabr? How is it possible that Abbas doesn't have sabr? Abbas would see that everyone is going, but he's still there. He goes, he asks for permission. The Imam says, Anta sahibu liwai ya Abbas. Abbas, you are the alamdar of my army. Abbas, you carry the flag of my army. Iltafata nahv al-qawm. Abbas begins to look around him. He says, oh Mawla, what army is left for me to carry the flag for? At that point when the children are crying and they're saying, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, it's stated that a 3.5-year-old girl goes to her chacha Abbas. Abbas was the one, whenever there was hardship on any of these children, that one person they went to was Aba Fadl Abbas. Abbas, he gains permission and he says, at least let me get water. Imam al-Hussein says, oh Abbas, get water. Abbas, he takes a water bag. He takes an arrow. He takes a flag. He begins to fight people by the Furat. A point it comes when Aba Fadl Abbas, he reaches the water of the Furat. When Abbas reaches the water of the Furat, he begins to say, Ya nafsu min ba'd al-Husayn huni, wa ba'dahu la kunti an takuni. Hada Husaynun waridul manuni wa tashrabina barid al-ma'ini. He says, oh nafs, Hussein is dying. Oh Abbas, Hussein is dying. You want to drink this water when Hussein is thirsty. This isn't the actions of Aba Fadl Abbas. You know, every shaheed, they would recite their rajas, their poetry, when they would go to the battlefield. Abbas didn't recite it when he's going to the battlefield. Abbas recited it when he's returning to the battlefield. One alim would say the reason Abbas did this is because he was saying to his brother that when you come to my body, know what you're about to see. That when you come, make sure you come with sabr to my body. Abbas, he takes that water. He places it in the water bag. He places it on the flag. he begins to come back. As Aba Fadl Abbas is returning, a point it comes, one individual, he cuts the right arm of Abbas. Abbas says, Wallah in qatatum yamini, inni ohami abadan andini, wa an imam in sadiq al-yaqini. That even if you cut my arm, my life is for Hussein. It stated at that moment, Abbas, he moves the flag to his left arm. They cut the left arm of Abbas. The third thing which happens is that when Abbas has the water bag, it stated one arrow goes in the bag. The water, it falls. After that, Abbas doesn't look to the tent anymore. Because when he looked to the tent, the children would stand. They would wait. Our Chacha Abbas is coming. It's stated in the Maqatil over here that one arrow is fired. And that arrow goes into the right eye of Aba Fadl Abbas. There was one alim in Karbala. He recited this masayib. Another alim said, don't recite this musibah. He says, why? He says that you don't know if it's authentic. That alim says, that night I saw a man with no arms. I saw Abbas. Abbas said, why did you stop my reciter? He says, I didn't know if it was true. Abbas said that it was true. An arrow went in my eye. But when an arrow goes in your eye, your first reaction is that your arms, they go. He says, I didn't have any arms. I would look to the right. I would look to the left. Then at that point, I put that arrow in between my knees. I bent over. The arrow was in between my knees. Using my knees, I pulled that arrow. I've left all the masayib. Imam Hussein came to the body of Abbas. Abbas says, don't take me to the tents, leave me over here. You've heard all of the masayib. You know, in Karbala, in the time of Sayyid Mahdi Bahar al-Ulum, it stated that water had come into the shrine of Abbas. And they were renovating the shrine. As they were renovating the shrine, one worker says to the Sayyid that I have one question for you. Sayyid Bahar al-Ulum says, what is your question? The man, he says, that you would always say that Abbas was a tall individual. My only question is, why is the grave of Abbas so small? Sayyid Bahar al-Ulum says, Abbas is that shaheed, that not only did they cut the neck of Abbas, not only did they cut the arms of Abbas, when they trampled the body of Abbas would ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أيا منقلب ينقلبون. ماتم يا حسين.
Suns are burning, Zainab's calling. Where have you gone, O Abbas? Hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas. One When Shimmer sits on his chest, he's thinking of his sister. The horses trample his body, he's still looking at the tent. O protector of the women, why have you left your Hussein? Hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas. When his mother looks across the battlefield, she's weeping. Fatima seeing her Hussein, how they've taken everything. You were the prayer she made for him. Why did you leave her son? Hi Abbas, hi Abbas. How the sister of 18 brothers is now standing by herself. Where have you all disappeared now? Do you not see Zainab? The army has taken her veil. They have tied up the women. Hi Abbas, hi Abbas. Do you not see how they drag us, how they beat us, torture us, how they hit Zainab with a spear, how Sakina's in fear? Brother, come here, help your sister. Why do you not answer? Hi Abbas, hi Abbas, hi Abbas.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الله أكبر الله أكبر